I mean, these are very useful. These are brain extenders. We didn't have these a little while ago. Generally in my talks, I ask people, who here has their phone? I'll bet here, maybe there's one or two people, but everybody here has their phone. That wasn't true 5 years ago, definitely wasn't true 10 years ago. And it is a brain extender, but it does have some speed problems. So we want to increase that speed. A question could just come up where we're talking and the computer would instantly tell you what the answer is without you having to fool around with an external device. And that's almost feasible today. And something like that would be helpful to do this.
But could you not get a lot of the good that you talk about if we just kept it? The problem with connecting our brains to the machines is suddenly you're in this whole world, these complicated privacy issues where stuff is being injected in my brain, stuff in my brain is, is going elsewhere. Like, you're opening up a whole host of ethical, moral, existential problems. Can't you just make the phones a lot better?
Well, that's the idea, that we can do that without having to go inside your brain, but be able to tell what's going on in your brain externally without going inside the brain, with some kind of device.
All right, well, let's keep moving into the future. So we're moving into the future. We have exponential growth in computer. We solve a way of, ideally figuring out how to communicate directly with your brain to speed things up. Explain why nanobots are essential to your vision of where we're going.
Well, if you really want to tell what's going on inside the brain, you've got to be able to go at the level of the particles in the brain so we can actually tell what they're doing. And that's feasible. We can't actually do it, but we can show that it's feasible. And that's one possibility. We're actually hoping that you could do this without actually affecting the brain at all.
Okay. All right, so we're pushing ahead. We've got nanobots. They're running around inside of our brain. They're understanding our head. They're extracting thoughts. They're inputting thoughts. Let's go to this nice question, which fits in lovely, from Louise Kandreva. What are the 5 main ethical questions that we will face as that happens?
Is 4 enough?
4 is fine. There might even be 6, Ray, but you can give us 4.
I mean, we're going to have a lot more power if we can actually, with our own brain, control computers. Does that give people too much power? Also, I mean, right now we talk about having a certain amount of value based on your talent. This will give talent to people who otherwise don't have talent. And talent won't be as important because you'll be able to gain talent just by merging with the right kind of large language model, or whatever we call them. And it also seemed kind of arbitrary why we would give more power to somebody who has more talent, because they didn't create that talent, they just happen to have it. But everybody says we should give somebody who has talent in an area more power. This way you'd be able to gain talent. Just as in the Matrix, you could learn to fly a helicopter just by downloading the right software, as opposed to spending a lot of time doing that. Is that fair or unfair? I mean, I think that would fall into the ethical challenge area. And it's not like we get to the end of this and say, okay, this is finally what the singularity is all about, and people can do certain things and they can't do other things, but it's over. We'll never get to that point. I mean, this curve is going to continue, the other curve is going to continue indefinitely. And we've actually shown, for example, with nanotechnology, we can create a computer where a 1 liter computer would actually match the amount of power that all human beings today have, like 10 to the 10th persons, would all fit into 1 liter computer. Does that create ethical problems? So, I mean, a lot of the implications kind of run against what we've been assuming about human beings.
Wait, on the talent question, which is super interesting, do you feel like everybody, when we get to 2040, will have equal capacities?
I think we'll be more different because we'll have different interests, and you might be into some fantastic type of music, and I might be into some kind of literature or something else. I mean, we're going to have different interests, and so we'll excel at certain things depending on what your interests are. So it's not like we all have the same amount of power, but we'll all have fantastic power compared to what we have today.
And if you're in Texas where there are no regulations, you'll probably get it first instead of you in Massachusetts.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Let me ask you another ethical question while we're on this one. So about a few minutes ago, you mentioned the capacity to replicate someone's brain and bring them back. So let's say I do that with my father, passed away 6 years ago, sadly. I bring him back, and I'm able to create a mind and a body just like my father's, right? It's exact, perfect replica, all of his thoughts. What happens to all the bills that he owed when he died? Because that's a lot of money, and a lot of bill collectors call me. Do we have to pay those off, or are we good?
Well, we're doing something like that with my daughter, and you can read about this in her book, and it's also in my book. We collected everything my father had written. Now, he died when I was 22, so he's been dead for more than 50 years. And we fed that into a large language model and basically asked it the question, of all the things he ever wrote, what best answers this question? And then you can put any question you want. And then you could talk to it. You'd say something, you'd then go through everything he ever had written and find the best answer that he actually wrote to that question. And it actually was a lot like talking to him. You could ask him what he liked about music. He was a musician. He actually liked Brahms the best. And it was very much like talking to him. And I reported on this in my book, and Amy talks about this in her book. And Amy actually asked the question, could I fall in love with this person, even though I've never met him? And she does a pretty good job. I mean, you really do fall in love with this character that she creates, even though she never met him. So we can actually, with today's technology, do something where you can actually emulate somebody else. And I think as we get further on, we can actually do that more and more responsibly, and more that really would match that person, and actually emulate the way he would move and so on, his tone of voice.
Well, my dad, he loved Brahms too, particularly those piano trios. So if we can solve the back taxes problem, we'll get my dad and your dad's bots. Hang out, it'll be great.
Well, yeah, that'd be cool.
All right. All right. We got 20 minutes left. I want to get to the thing that I most want to understand, because it's something that's, by the way, this book is wonderful. I think you guys are all going to get signed copies of it when it comes out. It's truly remarkable, as are all of Ray's books. Whether you agree or disagree, they'll definitely make you think more. One of the things that I don't think you do in this book is describe what a day will be like in 2045, when we're all much more intelligent. So it's 2045. We're all a million times as intelligent. I wake up. Do I have breakfast or do I not have breakfast?
Well, the answer to that question is kind of the same as it is now. But first of all, the reason it's called a singularity is because we don't really fully understand that question. Singularity is borrowed from physics. The singularity in physics is where you have a black hole and no light can escape, and so you can't actually tell what's going on inside the black hole. And so we call it a singularity, a physical singularity. So this is a historical singularity, but we're borrowing that term from physics and call it a singularity, because we can't really answer the question. If we actually multiply our intelligence a millionfold, what's that like? It's a little bit like asking a mouse, gee, what would it be like if you had the amount of intelligence of this person? The mouse wouldn't really even understand the question. It does have intelligence, has a fair amount of intelligence, but it couldn't understand that question, it couldn't articulate an answer. That's a little bit what it would be like for us to take the next step in intelligence by adding all the intelligence that the singularity would provide.
Wait, I just want to make sure I understand.
But I'll give you one answer. I said if you're diligent, you'll achieve longevity escape velocity in 5 or 6 years. And if we want to actually emulate everything that's going on inside a brain, let's go out a few more years, say to 2040, 2045. Now there's a lot, you talk to a person, they've got all the connections that they had originally, plus all this additional connections that we add through having them access computers, and that becomes part of their thinking. So can you, suppose that person like blows up, or something happens to their mind, you definitely can recreate everything that's of a computer origin, because we do that now. Anytime we create anything with a computer, it's backed up. So if the computer goes away, you've got the backup and you can recreate it. It says, okay, but what about their thinking in their normal brain that's not done with computers? We don't have some ways of backing that up. When we get to the singularity by 2045, we'll be able to back that up as well. Because we'll be able to figure out, we'll have some ways of actually figuring out what's going on in that sort of non-mechanical brain. And so we'll be able to back up both their normal brain as well as the computer edition. And I believe that's feasible by 2045.
But in your vision of it,
So you can back up their entire brain. Now that doesn't guarantee, I mean, the whole world could blow up and you lose all the data centers, and so it's not absolute guarantee. So.
that would be a shame. But what I don't understand is, will we even be fully distinct people if we're sharing memories and we're all uploading our brains to the cloud and we're getting all this information coming back directly into our neocortex? Are we still distinct?
Yes, but we could also find new ways of communicating. So if the computers that extend my brain interact with computers that extend your brain, we could create something that's like a hybrid or not. And it would be up to our own decision as to whether or not to do that. So there'll be some new ways of communicating.
Let me ask another question about this.